what happens if we do give people more space, you know, if we do really go down the discovery of like, what does it mean to be Black in 2021? You know what I mean? Like, are things better for us?
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily say so. I think there's a higher amount of visibility, but there's also a lot, I kind of feel like we're at foundational step one.
Right.
You know, because it's like, oh, okay, so now that y'all actually care to be invested in what it is that we're doing, okay, so now y'all need to understand us first. So do we go down the process of explaining, you know what I mean? Like who we are, you know, our identity, our backgrounds, it's so much. And like for us that have been going through it and living through it our whole lives, it's kind of like, I don't even have the time to do that for you. So just let me just be, you know, let me be.
NASA had posted an image on their Instagram a few days ago of these two galaxies that are starting to converge on one another. And who knows how they were able to capture that.
Right.
But the fact that it's happening in our lifetime and the fact that we can't see that movement in our lifetime, you know, and thinking about that sort of idea of it's happening, you know, but you don't get to see the movement. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Doing the work that is like, okay, in my lifetime, it may not happen, but I know what needs to happen, so I'm going to do the necessary things that need to be done.
What types of things do you like to address with the pieces that you create?
Yeah.
Because obviously there's a lot of Blackness that's given.
Yeah. Well, if you look at art history, like, the Black protagonist has just not been there. Like, you just don't have Black existence in the paradigm of art. So a lot of my work primarily is just to combat the erasure of Blackness. Like, I paint Black people and specifically Black men, because, you know, that's a story that I understand a lot more. And even being, you know, having sisters and just being so close with different communities, it's like I really try to be ultra specific in the story that I'm trying to tell. And I want to be very cautious to not tell the wrong story of Black women. So, you know, in painting Black men, I paint them on all scales, I paint them on all formats to really primarily combat the erasure of them.
The fact that that is such a revolutionary act, you know, to simply exist, you know, people want to have something to say. They want their opinions heard about your life. And so, like, how do you, with regard to duality, how do you balance that? How do you balance the self with the art and your public sort of like persona and the sort of opening of yourself through your art for people to give opinion with your own self-worth and self-awareness?
Right. Yeah, for me, I think my greatest tool within activism is my hands. You know, I know a lot of people are positioned to use their voice. I do that through my hands and my work. I think, you know, it's very important to be able to show up to events, the demonstrations, and be able to be there and stand as a collective. But I think where I can get ultra specific and do my thing to the highest extreme is through creating art. So there is a lot of me that ends up in every piece of work. I'm always positioning myself for the images that I'm even taking, and then just mapping different faces or different facial structures across that. So it just doesn't look like a high amount of this guy's just painting himself in and everywhere. You know what I mean?
Portraits,
yeah, because even if you think about it, there is no necessary Black aesthetic. There is no Black aesthetic that exists within art either. Think about like any old painting that you could see. Like, there's always a certain facial structure that is put there. And that does not exist within Blackness, within art. And I think that's a really interesting thing, is like, we haven't even had enough of it for them to even be like, oh, that is a Black model that's being used across different figures, different points, different pieces. So yeah, I like to morph and change that. And really also, I think it's also about, our lives are forever changing. So it's in looking at the events that happened last year and looking at the things that we're facing now, and just trying to find a way to be able to tell that story visually.
I love that too, because even thinking about, what you just mentioned about Blackness with regard to art and how it's, being practiced right now, this is like the birth of hip hop,
yes,
exactly. In art form, and just the beauty of it. Like I find myself just being so like happy, to see Blackness portrayed in all of these different ways.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I feel like there's certain people that'll kind of be like, oh, they're just painting Black people again and again and again. But it's like, no, what you have to realize is that this is about self-expression.
That's it.
This is about seeing yourself in the history books.
Right.
And the ways in which we were taught, we only looked a certain way.
Yeah.
Even in the written text.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? We're only portrayed in this one sort of like very narrow, perspective.
We gave y'all turn to be able to tell about like what Black equality could be and what happened. They took it, they distorted it, and they chose willingly to say, I'm gonna choose this part, not this part, not this part. Yeah. So we are now in, many are calling like the new Renaissance. I like to think of it as like new perspectives. Yeah. Because like now we have like a lot of Black people that are coming from so many different walks of life that are able to tell their particular story that imparts the story of many. Again, we can just be like, yo, two strangers could start having a conversation. We'll very quickly find common ground.
Oh yeah.
And if anything, it's like through the struggle that we all go through.
True.
And the fact that we need one another for that. And historically, we've been either positioned against one another so much that like we just naturally just kept away from one another.
Yeah.
Or we weren't given the opportunity to get close to each other. We're now telling that story the right way. Had I went to school for art, I still would have been doing this exact same thing.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
I still would have. I really like to, like, my favorite artists are artists like Francis Bacon that really knew ways to pull and move the figure around and to use like one single figure to operate a large amount of space. I don't like exactness because like that's the humanity of life, right?
Right.
There's no perfection in this, you know what I mean? It's like we're right here and like shit's falling. Just power through it, you know what I mean? Like what happens whenever that happens in the real world? Like, whenever something I wanted to go my way just didn't pan out like that. If I get bogged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah, and I try not to just let things bog me down. Whatever is out of my control, it's just that.
Tell me about before the mural. Tell me about what was going on for you in that time.
It was a mess. It was a mess. Like it was a mess. Cause like every year around this time, I start doing planning for the next year of work. Like people know my hand to change a lot through the work to just tell that story in just a multi-layered form. It's never the same type of work over and over and over again. I like to stretch, pull, and do more. So this is planning time. So in 2019, I was thinking about, okay, here's how I want to approach 2020, and then 2020 does. You know what I mean? I think the craziest thing about like this year in particular is that it's literally 2021.
Yeah.
Like it won. Like it just took people.
It got the W.
It got the W. And it took people and was like, whatever you think about life, here's this. And it just changed. So for me in particular, like I was at home because again, like I want to use my hands to be able to work through that.
Right.
And I'm looking at the TV and just like, yo, the world is just changing. And so it was a bit of a mess because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then I'm in the studio just kind of working, kind of arriving on something that I wanted to get an idea of doing. And then I got that message about, yo, we're thinking about some, would you be interested? And immediately I'm like, yes. Yeah. And then I get to find out within 10 hours that all the homies were there as well.
Yeah. Like
literally like Moses and I as my brother, we had been having conversations for 2-3 months leading up to that. We hadn't even met in person. because of pandemic. We're literally taking it old school, like phone talks.
Yeah.
We didn't even FaceTime, we phone talk, and then for hours. And I'm just like, wow, like such an incredible human. And then I get to find out that I'm going to be painting with him, and we're about to make something unlike anything I had made before. And again, I still remember that day very, very, very clearly. It was dumping rain throughout the whole day. We're all in the message like, yo, we're gonna do it.
Yep.
1 o'clock, sun broke, we all came up. And on top of that, you gotta know that like CHOP was in the center of the news.
Yeah.
I thought that this was about to be a war zone when I got here.
Yeah.
I pulled up and was like, you guys wanna watch news?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Seriously, don't let the news fool you. You can't let it fool you.
We all came together and did something so special. And again, I always say this, I think everyone's saying this, like no body of work, no mural comes together that quick.
Yeah.
Like, especially for 48 hours, 24 hours before to have gotten a message about it.
Yeah.
So that's just, again, divine timing. It was divine timing. Everyone came together, showed out, we all painted, everyone's on their hands and knees. We all walked away limping, like, yo.
Bodies was hurting,
but our ancestors were with us, protecting us, you know, providing for us, sheltering, because we all got everything done. And I don't think anyone thought anything of what would happen next.
No.
We just did what we just normally do.
Definitely not. I didn't think it was gonna last. I knew it wasn't gonna last.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're putting a mural on the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In the middle of the street.
In the middle of the street.
This is
The intention was never for it to last.
Right. Right. And I think that's the really beautiful part of the bisecting of activism and art. Well, if anything, they're one and the same, right?
Yes.
So by doing such a renegade act, and I don't necessarily know if renegade is the word to use, but to do something so non-traditional in that moment and to just walk away with like, yeah, take that. Y'all take that. Like, here you go. Just so you know, again, going back to James Brown, loud and proud. There it is. We matter. We know that. It's been known by us, but now maybe y'all can see that.
There was a bit of, I don't even know how to describe it, but I'm at home and I live near the courthouse. So when the protests happened, I was in the middle of it.
Beautiful.
You know what I mean?
Thank you for doing that.
I mean, but also not in the middle of it.
Right.
Because I'm a Black woman.
Right.
And so I'm not taking my ass outside.
Period.
People are
said,
losing eyes. People are getting tear gas. People are getting beat the fuck up.
Right.
You know, like real talk. And, you know, the powers that be, they revel in those types of things.
Of course.
And they live for it. They were ready for it.
Of course.
You know, so there's all of these things taking place and people are putting their bodies on the line in a way that is, you know, what has been put at the forefront of the entire protest. It's like being a physical barrier between the powers and the people.
Beautiful.
You know, and so with regard to choosing art as a form of activism, instead of maybe being on the front line, instead of maybe organizing and getting shields and getting umbrellas and things like that, like how do you feel about that part of it?
Yeah, they're all supposed to be done. You know, that's why it takes a village. We need people to be out there that have the voices, that can say, we need the people that are orators, that can, you know, make the speeches that just strike to the nerve and cut through. And we need the people that can visually appeal to it. And I feel like that's where I lie at. We have the ability to tell what our time on earth really truly looks like through our work. And I think that's why, like, not even I think, but that's why I say so dedicated to the work that I'm doing, and fortunate and grateful and happy to know people like you, the rest of us on the collective, because we really are working in a unified mission behind the work. Because that's, as I said, is always just gonna supersede all of us.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far, and I feel like it's definitely only the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. With all the social issues, with all the issues of the world that are happening simultaneously, and being able to respond to those through the visual work, that ends up being a little bit of a trouble as well. So it's like you kind of gotta step back and be like, okay, I've been able to take all this information, now I need to synthesize it and make it into something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
It is really about like being able to change the format and be able to reproduce something new and just know that like, hey, I'm throwing it up for the next generation to come behind.
Real talk.
I love how earlier the point was posed to you and I watched your face when they're like, oh, so are there more people that are in there? Is it growing?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
That
That is going to happen. There has to be a natural graduation of,
absolutely.
Cool, these are the foundational artists. Here's the next generation. How do we mentor them, foster them, bring them in, throw them the ball, and say, okay, we're on to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest point of that is just like with the mural, we had no idea what it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know, we had no idea how people were going to receive it. We have no idea what the future of VMC is, but we know that we're going to do everything that we can here and now to cement and solidify this time.
Exactly.
Because people are going to come back to it. And they have to have something to come back to. If they're not able to understand it now, they will at some point. And if you didn't make the thing, then they have nothing to come back to.
Exactly.
So you have to do with now what you have.
You have to do with now what you have.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's it.